This episode is for the writer who has been burned by editors before. You've invested time, money, and trust into an editor, and you feel, if not betrayed exactly, maybe a little disillusioned. Your memoir isn't actually any closer to being finished, and now your document is marked up with comments and changes that you don't actually know what to do with and that don't actually feel like they're a good fit. Today, I want to dive into why that is, why it happens, and how to re-empower yourself as the author seeking support.
You are listening to the Memoir Method podcast, the place for writers, readers, and anyone who appreciates the collective power of our stories. In this podcast, we explore the impact of memoir alongside an examination of writing techniques and strategies used in the genre. Whether you are a writer looking for inspiration and guidance or a passionate reader seeking meaningful connections through shared experiences, the Memoir Method podcast is your go-to conversation spot. I'm your host, Charlotte, editor, writer, and the heart behind Charlotte Writes. Let's get started.
So I've said this before, but I want to start off today's episode with sharing this again. I am not often a writer's first editor. And I didn't set out to be your second or third editor. That was never part of my marketing plan, but that's actually often how it plays out with the clients who come into my world, with the clients who get the best results from my work. These writers will pop into a free 30-minute call with me saying, I worked with this other editor and fill in the blank. They didn't get what I was trying to say. I'd have to rewrite the whole manuscript if I followed their feedback, and I don't know if that's necessary. They felt exceptionally critical, and I actually felt horrible afterward. I have turned out to be the editor that writers turn to when they need a different, fresh experience. And I've spent a lot of time in the past few months, especially, really figuring out why that is. Often, my writers come to me with a dash of skepticism. I kind of have to work through that obstacle at first with some clients. I like your vibe. I'm getting a good feeling about this. But there's often a but. Could you really be different from any of the other people I've tried? There's a hesitancy there, and I understand it, and I have so much compassion for that because you've invested not only time and money, but also your story, your emotion, your vulnerability into an experience that didn't actually work out for you the way that you'd wanted it to. And so I know that you are frustrated. I know that you're overwhelmed, and you're probably more than a little discouraged from the experiences that you've had before. And I'm going to say something that might ruffle your feathers a little bit, so just stick with me. Your editor might actually be doing their job. They just don't have what they need from you to do their job in a way that's going to help you. I'll get into that more in a minute. And also, I'm going to lob out the idea that you might not actually need an editor right now. You might need something more like a writing coach. So stay tuned until the end because I'm going to tackle that a little bit more and make sure you understand the difference because that is actually way more crucial than even I realized up until recently. So let's lay out what an editor actually does. Your editor is going to highlight what's not working for you or what's not working in your manuscript. That's our job. We want to amplify your story, and we do that by giving direct feedback that you get to decide what to do with. But we can only work with what is on the page already. If you listened to September's Why It Works or Not interview with Annie B. Jones, she talks about this. She published her memoir traditionally with a traditional publisher, and she had never worked with an editor before. Her editor was an in-house editor with her publisher, and she was actually kind of expecting more of a writing coach experience, much more of kind of a workshop feel and relationship. And so she was surprised when it was not that, when it was much more direct, and she had to figure out on her end how to implement. Her editor could only work with what she had sent them. Her editor is really doing her job. Your editor is probably just doing their job, and they're probably doing it well, but it's frustrating for you because you don't actually know what you're trying to say. If you don't have clarity on what you're writing, then an editor's feedback is going to be limited in how helpful it can be. So if you've taken your manuscript to an editor before, you've looked over those comments and maybe that editorial letter, and you've thought, well, now what? You might not be as clear on your story as you thought you were, because without your clarity on your story, even an amazing editor can only go so far with what you give them. So do you see where you might have been sabotaging yourself? The writers who come to me, when we dig into their manuscript, I don't edit first. We get the clarity first. But most editors, if they are just editing, are not going to do that with you. So again, I'll tackle this at the end of kind of what the difference is between an editor and a writing coach and how to figure out what you actually need. If you hire an editor without having clarity about what you're actually writing and without that clarity being somewhere in the manuscript, you are kind of shooting yourself in the foot. I want you to be honest with yourself as you're evaluating where maybe you have sabotaged yourself before. Where have you outsourced the outcome of your memoir to an editor, thinking that they're going to fix it? Like, I know this is messy, an editor's going to fix it. But then you're disappointed when their feedback didn't do what you actually wanted it to do. This is because an editor cannot give you clarity. A writing coach can ask the right questions, can help you reflect, can prod you in the right directions and kind of bounce ideas back and forth. That's not actually what an editor's job is. And that's why their feedback has you feeling so frustrated. You don't have your own filter to use to interpret editorial feedback because you are not clear on what you're writing, who you're writing for, why your reader should care about it. In fact, when you keep seeking feedback without clarity behind it, you're actually just going to multiply that confusion and doubt around what you're doing. You're going to make your work harder for yourself. If you keep going to editors without understanding your story from an editorial perspective, you make your work as an author so much harder and you make the process take longer. This is why when writers come to me having worked with other editors, they're so frustrated, they're so discouraged. They have made the process and the writing feel impossible to themselves. And it's not actually the editor's fault. So an editor's notes are not exactly a map. They're more of a mirror of what you already have on the page, a different way of looking at your story, but they can only work with what you have given them. You still need to know where you are going. I've had this business for 5 years now, and I've noticed that a lot of memoir writers don't know where they're going as much as they need to if they want to be successful. So now the question for you is very simple. Do you know where you are going? And this is going to take some reflection. So when you seek editorial feedback, you need to match that with a level of reflection, both before and after. Do I know what I'm writing? Do I know who I'm writing for? Do I know why my reader should care about it? Make sure you can answer those questions before you hand over your manuscript. Make sure that you have gone through a revisions round, being able to answer those questions with that clarity, and then use that filter when you are processing editorial feedback. How does that feedback support what you're trying to do with this memoir? You have to have that inner knowing, that inner clarity first. Otherwise, any editor's notes are just going to be noise. And I say that with so much love for my own profession, so much love for my other editors out there, and so much love for you as the author. But if you don't know what you're trying to say, any editorial feedback is going to just be extra noise that's going to make your whole process more confusing and frustrating for you. One way that's different about the editing experience that I offer writers in my high-level memoir development is that I don't just edit their work. Before we dive into edit mode, I actually coach you through the reflection required to make the most of those edits. This is where it's a writing coach editing hybrid. It's much more collaborative than what a straight up editor is even supposed to do. And I did this very organically and naturally with my clients, and it's only been recently that I've been able to articulate this is different from just editing. What I offer my clients is different from just a straight up developmental edit. It's a coaching experience with editing. It's a coaching experience with someone who is also an editor. And that provides writers the clarity that they need for writing to be fun again, for them to actually make progress, for them to actually get to the next stage in publishing. Like, this is what you need. You need that clarity. And that is one of my superpowers as your editor, is that I don't just edit. I also coach you through finding that clarity. I currently do have a couple of one-on-one slots open for that memoir development. So if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and book a free 30-minute call through the link in the show notes, and we can chat about whether this high-touch container will be a good fit for you. If you're not quite ready for that commitment yet, I made a free 9-minute video for you called 3 Hidden Reasons You Haven't Finished Your Memoir, where I highlight where that lack of reflection is actually sabotaging your edits and your progress. This is perfect for you if you have ever felt let down by a lackluster editing experience. I want you to be able to pinpoint exactly what's missing in your process. I want you to have that clarity on what's not working even for you. I want you to be able to articulate that for yourself so that then you can snap out of this frustration and actually finish your book. Head to the link in the show notes for that video. I'll send it straight to your inbox. I want you to win. I want you to finish. I want you to publish. I only win when you win. As I have really spent the past few months doing my own reflection from a business perspective, I've realized really important things about you and about what you need and about how you can actually finish your draft. You don't need more edits, not right now. You need to have that clarity. Go watch that video. Let me know what popped out to you, what resonated with you, and we can go from there. That's the point. I'm really excited to hear what resonates with you from that video, and I will see you next time.
You've just listened to an episode of the Memoir Method podcast. The Memoir Method podcast is presented by Charlotte Writes. If you liked what you heard, the best way to support the show is to subscribe through your preferred podcast player. And if you're feeling especially inspired, I'd love it if you left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Leaving a review really does help other readers and writers like yourself find the show. If you want to continue the conversation, you can find me on my website at charlottewrites.co or on Instagram at charlottejanewrites. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time. And remember that you have a story that matters.